Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. And we have Tino telling all on the Nick Viall Files podcast. Small YouTuber Nick Viall had Tino on today for a long conversation. We're going to play for you guys some clips of this conversation where Tino completely, without question, owns up to cheating on Rachel, the last Bachelorette, of course. We saw the after the final rose. They could not have a conversation. The wounds were too fresh. It was not good. This is probably the best way to do it, where he tells his side of the story uninterrupted. He makes zero excuses for what he did, although he does give us insight into why he felt the way he did and why they were his problems to work on. He talks about his anxious attachment and how they weren't on a break. He talks about how childish it was and how he just gave in. He shares the moment in which he did cheat and how the guilt took over. We're going to get to all that right now. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals, patreon.com/Dave Neal if you want behind-the-scenes bonus content. Today is the day to join. I've got my full wedding ceremony video up there on the Patreon today at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time if you want to watch the Saturday wedding. I know you guys have been super supportive, so I appreciate you deeply for all that. So let's get into it. I got about 10 clips to play. It's going to take a little bit here, and this only gets us to about halfway through the episode, and then we'll probably have a part two. Here's Tino talking about his mental health journey.
How would you say you're doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I just try to keep working on it. The whole having a psychologist thing, and I've been seeing him like twice a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wanted somebody if I really went south or something, they could make moves that some therapists can't because they're social workers and they can't like prescribe anything. But I feel like I've made like a lot of really good progress in it. Honestly, I probably am like 15 years overdue to start this kind of process. So I feel like every time I'm in a therapy session, we're limited to 45 minutes, and she's like, it's like origami. It's not just unfolding like a couple, sheets. It's
How long?
It's deep.
So a lot going on there with having a therapist, and he speaks about having a therapist that the show provided, but then after things went south with him and his ex-fiance, how he got his own therapist or psychologist, I should say.
There are things that transpired between me and Rachel that, as we've both said, are deeply personal, and we're not going to touch it.
Whatever you want to feel comfortable. Whatever you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It's.
I think.
And again, the thing he's referencing is the thing that the show also decided to edit out, which we don't know. It was something so deeply personal. The show edited it out, and nobody else knows what it is. And that's for them to know.
Can very easily go through the timeline without touching any of that, and just So I know you guys haven't talked to me before. Like, I'm definitely not on team cheater. Like, I do not stand by what I did at all. It was not cool. It wasn't fair to Rachel. And it haunts me daily still. Like, it's just, it's something I'm ashamed of, and certainly like wish I could have done it differently like a million times over.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not easy to say. We really appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I mean, it's you sound sincere, at least from where I'm sitting, I guess. What is your thought, I guess, on, there's that common phrase, once a cheater, always a cheater. What are your, as someone who just says you're not on team cheater, you have regret, how do you process that feeling, or what insecurities do you have around that question that gets commonly answered when people make that mistake?
Well, I don't, I'm certainly going to, strive the rest of my life to prove that is not the case, at least for me. My friends, if they said, oh, like my significant other cheated on me, like more often than not, I'd say, okay, you guys probably are, you should think about breaking up with them.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. You guys know me. I don't live in absolutes. I think once a cheater, always a cheater is a safe place to say, but at the same time, people can overcome things like the worst of crimes. People can vindicate themselves or recover from horrible things and learn and grow and overcome their fears. But if I also was, if Tino, the next lady who dates Tino, will have that in the back of her head. He'll have to work extra hard to win over her trust.
It's amazing. Rachel really, really knows how to partner and make them feel really special and valued. And, I think I'm more of like a words of affirmation person. I mean, like, she really made me feel so secure in our relationship and was just everything I could have asked for and more. Of course, the distance was challenging, but we found plenty of time to text and talk on the phone, and it was it was great. Like the meetups were always very passionate, and we got to learn so much more about each other because we weren't on like a timeline of you can see her for X amount of time and then we're going to pull you away and have you talk about that. Like it was just nice and it felt so real and it was so fun being with her. Like
what was
Okay, so let's go to the 21-minute mark here. And we're going to share a couple more clips before we get to the heavy stuff. But I tell you what, if you're Rachel watching this, which I don't think she'll do, I think there might be a feeling of like understanding that Tino's not out to get her here. He admits everything. He admits 100% unequivocally that these are his problems, that everything that happened was based on his fears.
Was like, how do you see it? Where did things take a shift, if at all, that resulted in you making this mistake that you now regret, or you say you regret?
I absolutely regret it.
Okay.
And I'll say it a million times. I do. It's the biggest mistake of my life. I mean, there was a lot of things that through like self-reflection, I kind of see like maybe weren't a problem, but I wasn't giving them the attention that they deserve. So like, I think a perfect example is I was seeing like the show's psychologist or therapist for a little bit. And I always said like, oh, you know, like, no, nothing about the show really bothers me. Or like, I didn't know what to talk to him about because things were just going so well. It was like, I didn't really put any effort into like really looking deep in and saying like, okay, this is a really unique situation where we met and fell in love. Maybe there are things that like I'm insecure about and my ego's just staying dormant. And I wish I did that. I wish I took like therapy way more seriously before we started having issues, because maybe that would have, I mean, I know for a fact that would have helped me find, you know, a healthier vice, a less toxic, you know, outlet.
And what I would have loved to hear is asking what the actual vice was, because I don't think I don't know if they discussed if whether or not he was using alcohol and that was part of the cheating or what. I'm not really sure. But not that it makes it right, but it makes you wonder, like, was he not in complete control over his, I mean, of course he was, and he cheated. So we start to see that Tino's getting a good grip on his own insecurities that come with dating the lead of the show and all the press tours that she's on. She's the famous one. And also watching and second guessing as you see her fall in love with these other guys. Here's how Tino talks about his anxious attachment.
And this could be like anxious attachment or whatever my therapist, you know, like, and I land on at the, you know, whatever point we do. Like, I think sometimes I have like a tendency when something happens or is said, like I think kind of catastrophically. So like my mind goes there and it's hard for, I think, anybody to like walk it back and be like, okay, what other interpretations could there be here? What positive interpretations?
Fatalistic. I'm kind of the same way, to be honest, Tino. I'm kind of the same way where like back up when my relationship wasn't as secure as it is now, as I show my new ring here. But yeah, early in relationships, when you don't have that bedrock of trust, you wonder if every fight is going to be the one that breaks you guys up. That's the fatalistic mindset. And then when you wonder that, you start worrying that everything you do will be something that ends it all. And it's a very thin ice to walk on. And that's a horrifying and really sad place to live. And that's something I'm sure he didn't know even existed within him, because it doesn't unearth itself until you're really on that tightrope.
And like, she was just busy. I mean, like, I don't think looking back on it, like, I mean, there was such like a healthier way to handle this kind of stuff. I mean,
well, how did you do it versus how?
I gotta tell you this, every time I've had like these sorts of issues in past relationships, it's always when I was unemployed. It's always when I didn't have any self-worth or value, or I wasn't busy with my own life. And then you start looking at the other person and you start being needy, and nobody wants someone who's needy. We always say this, relationships need to be the dessert, not the main course. When you're in this purgatory that him and Rachel were in, the relationship becomes the main course. There's nothing else going on but the relationship. So you're waiting for those moments, and they're also long distance, so they're hours apart. Time zone wise, it's a real recipe for a disaster. Real recipe.
How do you wish you would have done it?
Well, so I mean, obviously I went and made a mistake and did it
before that. Cheating.
Yeah. You know, like I tried to take initiative in the sense of like trying to push for a game plan of how we'd get better.
Sure.
And sometimes you just kind of do have to give them like a little breathing room so they can find their way back home. And I think like me being at times pushy about it, or maybe even just coming off that way, like that really put a lot more strain where
Do
I
you
should
mean,
have
like-
just been.
I mean, I'm seeing him very evolved here with the way he's talking about this. I know it's only been a few weeks since their breakup, but very evolved the way and it doesn't mean he will definitely avoid this in the future, but he understands that she was busy. He understands that he put so much pressure on her and he wasn't able to empathize with the position she was in. He's in so far, and again, I'm not Team Tino, I'm not Team Rachel, but I'm actually fascinated because, it'd be better for me. It'd be better for me if I watched this and he's like, you know what? F Rachel. Oh my gosh, that'd be better. But we're actually seeing a ton of diffusion here, a ton of ownership, and a ton of evolved conversation. I think this is great. Leave a comment.
Him and Gabby at the time when Rachel and I were going
Okay, this is now his comment on Zach and Gabby, because as we know, as he's going through these issues, there's another Bachelorette in her love.
our struggles, we're doing so amazing. Like they really were. And when you see that and you're feeling insecure, like that kind of amplifies it a little bit. Like me and Eric talked pretty regularly. He kind of was checking in, like, hey, how's everything going? And it just I remember I didn't even really want to talk to him about it because I didn't want to admit I didn't want to get vulnerable with anybody about like how I was feeling at the time. And I mean, just bottling it in led to kind of.
Did you communicate it with Rachel at all? I mean, because it sounds like when you say you took it to a more catastrophic place, did you feel like you guys were on the verge of breaking up, or like what was your mindset prior to this cheating, and we'll get into what exactly was the cheating, but what was that mindset, and did you ever communicate that insecurity to Rachel?
Yeah, I think, I mean, at the time, yeah, I definitely but I want to make I want to put it to bed. Like we weren't on a break. I don't know where that came from, but we were not separated or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, like when.
All right, so they weren't on a break, which is very interesting because that was a big theory that like maybe she threw the wedding ring off or the engagement ring off or this or that. Now clearly the relationship wasn't in a good place. I mean, on a break or not, the relationship was not in a good place. But here's an interesting part where Nick breaks down what actually goes down in the safe house visits, and I wanted to keep this in because you can see this moment of charm in the darkness where he has a good laugh at how much he actually enjoyed. It's a very sweet moment. Watch this.
Don't know. I think we often forget that after a bachelor couple gets engaged, they immediately take the ring from you. Right. And then you have these happy couple weekends, which happen every 2 to 3 weeks, and you're like locked in a house for 4 days. It's like nice, but also like fucking torturous because it's just like, you can't leave. It's a nightmare. I fucking hate it.
It's like after only doing dates.
And I think sometimes they will bring the ring if you ask for it, but like also not always. To like wear it for the 4 days that you're like hanging out with your fiance.
That's wild.
It's kind of weird. So
I liked it. Anytime we got it, I was like stoked.
Anytime we got it, I was like stoked. I was like, bring the ring, bring Neal Lane. Let's all just have a party.
Okay, well, that's very endearing. What was
endearing.
Going on there? Because it seemed like you guys were very careful with your words, or it seemed like there might have been some disagreement between you and Rachel in terms of, are you able to clear the air about that whole situation, or did any of that lead to your insecurity? Again, doesn't sound like you're justifying any of your actions, but
seems like what Nick's asking here is like, did she like threaten breakup? And again, he's not necessarily implying this, but trying to get to that point where there must have been something that went down within their fighting. We just don't get those answers from Tino. He doesn't take the bait. He does a good job of just sharing his truth, and not necessarily anything Rachel may have been thinking.
How did you get yourself in a situation where that even was possible?
Yeah, I mean, I just went out with friends, and I was feeling a little in the dumps. Like it was another one of those like we were giving each other space things, so we hadn't talked in a couple days, and just I was getting attention, and I mean, there's just like not even like it's. Like it sucks for me to have to say this because it's like so shameful and like I'm so not proud of it, but like I just kind of gave in. Like I just, I just leaned in and we kissed, and that wasn't fair to that girl either. That wasn't considerate of her feelings at all. Like she doesn't want to be wrapped up in any of this, and I just like I did it, and I realized really quick like this. I don't know what the future holds for me or Rachel, but I know this is not who I am, and this is not what I should be doing.
So he knows right away that it was wrong. He doesn't tell her the next day, and he says extensively over and over that he felt guilt, that he wishes he had let her know sooner.
Like we were starting to like kind of open up a little bit more, and we requested things of each other, and we picked a date where we were going to like see each other in person. So from that point
Who's
on,
Nick texting?
Having that day we were going to see each other in person, even if like, I had to go sleep on the couch or something like that till we could really get back to like being 100%, like I just had something to look forward to in the relationship. And that was huge to me.
Texting somebody?
And after that, I mean, our trajectory, and largely almost solely because of the work she put in. And she said that, and I hope she knows, like, I really appreciate that about her, because she put in a lot of work and it got us to such an amazing place. That's why that's essentially, and this is selfish again, I should have told her right away, but that's where the guilt really started to take over, because
All right, so the guilt took over because Rachel started to put in the work to sort of overcome whatever issues that they were having, along with, of course, the work that Tino's been putting in. Let me know what you guys think so far. I'm going to have another part 2 of this because there's so much to get into. I'll be on Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Neal, if you want to see the behind-the-scenes wedding ceremony video. It's on my wedding ceremony video, patreon.com/Dave Neal. All right, we'll be back. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think so far.